Hello and welcome to this week's edition of MTV, where my word is perspective. You know, perspective is the interrelationship between the idea that you have in your mind and the facts that are known to you. You know, what I can see in front of me might very well be only a really small portion of the bigger picture. Think of it as you're looking straight ahead, but there's a bend in the road or around the corner and you don't know what comes around that corner. So your perspective is based only on what is actually in front of you. See, oftentimes what happens is we draw conclusions based on our field of view or our perspective. And often those conclusions might be wrong because we have limited information that we're able to consider. So perspective is really important. Now, let me give you an example. Last week, I had 4 shows scheduled for Monday, a Friday, and 2 on Saturday. And ultimately, what ended up happening is one by one, those shows came off my calendar. The first 2, I thought, okay, 2 on the same day. I'm not sure what's going on, but you know, that the very next day after I confirmed both of those shows not happening, I received a call from a fellow leader asking if I could travel up to Oklahoma City to take care of a roundup. You know, I wouldn't have had that opportunity had those 2 shows have been holding on my calendar. So it became an opportunity to serve. Then there was concern, well, I'm going to be gone and needing family time. Well, then when the Friday show needed to reschedule, that gave me opportunity to go out and have a fun family night with Fred and our boys. You see, my limited perspective on the front side of those 4 shows coming off my calendar would have been an insufficient view to be able to draw an accurate conclusion. Ultimately, I had to step back and say, God, what are you doing? How can I be of service to you? And as I did that, my perspective began to expand. You know, another example of just putting things into perspective, you know, we need to have a broad perspective. We also, though, sometimes need to put things into perspective. Another example from last week, my grandmother, my mother's mother, who had been sick for quite some time, died on Thursday, April 18th. You know, when I look at the challenges of show cancellations or postponements or challenges of that type, I think, you know, when I put it into the perspective of I'm alive, that I'm able to even have those challenges in my life versus death, which is a finality for here on earth, you know, that perspective allows us to think differently about our circumstances. So I want to encourage you this week to expand your perspective. Some of the things that I do would be to trust God is not surprised. No matter what happens in my life, my business, my relationships, God is not surprised by that. I can trust that He is working a plan that's for my good. And when I embrace that plan, even when it's different from what I had in my mind, I can trust that it is a good plan. A third thing that I try to do is have an attitude of gratitude. You know, it's really hard to hang out in a pity party from lack of perspective when we choose to say, Lord, I am thankful for, and fill in the blank, and start listing all the ways that you can be thankful for what God is doing in your life and in your business. And then finally, I use Scripture to strengthen my resolve and allow God to fully or more fully expand my perspective. Because ultimately, the more I know of God, the more I know about how God has made me, the greater my perspective becomes. And I look at things differently. I submit to you Psalms 18, verse 19. He brought me out into a spacious place. You know, when we are in those spacious places, our perspective is broad, our view is large, and how we interact with our circumstances and the people that God has brought into our life changes for the better. So I challenge you this week to choose to have God expand your perspective. And I'll see you back here next week for MTV.